Hi, welcome to Savage Strategies. This is Annie Reed with AnnieReed.com, and we're so excited that you're here because over these next 8 weeks, we are going to talk about your end of year strategy. Now, we know it's still pretty early for you to consider your end of year strategy, and depending on when you watch this, it might have already passed, but I promise that there is no time like the present to get ready, whether it's January 1st or September 1st or even December 1st. So I'm going to give you some practical and some realistic tips on how to excel at your end of year strategy for you and your nonprofit or ministry. And these tips are just expertise for myself and from others who have done this over the course of their life, who have seen success and who have reached milestones in end of year fundraising. Now, for most nonprofits, the end of year fundraising accounts for about 30 to 40% of their annual revenue in the months of September through December. And for a handful of nonprofits, especially the smaller ones, it accounts for up to 60% of their revenue, which is an awful lot of money for you not to have a strategy well in advance prepared to ensure your success in fulfilling this campaign. So, the very first thing that I would recommend is that you pull data. I know we talk a lot about data around here, but I promise it's going to be extremely useful. So what I need you to do as your development director or as the ED of your organization is I need you to pull all of the end of year fundraising that your nonprofit has done over the last year to 5 years. Now, if you don't have 5 years worth of data, that's okay. one to 3 years, 1 to 2 years, even last year will be extremely helpful in understanding where you should allocate your time and your effort as a team for your end of year fundraising. Once you pull those numbers, I need you to understand what is realistic for you to raise in that coming year. So if last year you raised 10% of your income from the end of your fundraising, then I need you to understand that it's probably going to be about 10 to 15% again this year. And then if you raised, say, 40% of your income, you can realistically expect that you can raise it to 45 or 50%, 50%. Typically, I would say end of year fundraising increases should happen at a 10 to 20, oftentimes 30% increment over the last year. However, you know your nonprofit, you know the challenges that you're facing, and you need to know whether you can meet that expectation or not. I don't want you to set yourself up to fail. I believe in realistic expectations, realistic goals, especially for you as the development director or fundraising manager. I want to make sure that you are set up for success. So I need you to look at the numbers for your end of year fundraising and actually write down what is realistic for you to raise in this coming year. This coming year has a lot of challenges. There's a recession on the horizon. The stock market has been extremely wonky, and job market is pretty unstable. So I want you to take all these into consideration. I also want you to take into consideration what your nonprofit has done over the last year. Is it on an uptick or on a downtick? Do you see a possible increase coming, or is there a possibility that your nonprofit could decrease for whatever reason? And I want you to consider all of these factors when you're setting up the goal for your end of year fundraising. Now, if you are in a downtrend, don't fret, because I can tell you from personal experience that even in a downturn, you can hit above and beyond your goals. Now, again, I want you to set up realistic with the expectation that you're going to just propel past it. But I want you to know that if you set up a realistic goal, that it is more encouragement for you as you end of the year and go into 2025. So what does this goal look like? So for the typical nonprofit that we assist, if everything is pretty even kill for the nonprofit, meaning that they've raised the allocated amount of money for this year, and that they're expected to raise that allocated money for the remainder of the year, I would say a 10 to 15% increase is pretty realistic. I would say that typically we hit 20 to 30% of that goal. But again, my personal goal I would set is 10 to 15% with the expectation inwardly of 20 to 30%. Now, if your nonprofit is new, you're struggling, or this year has just not been your year, let's start at 5 to 10%. 5 being the bare minimum, 10% being being a woohoo, we hit it kind of number. So now, as you gather these numbers, I want you to also look at what brought in this money for the past year and then the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What appeals generated that revenue for you and your nonprofit? Was it social media? Was it email marketing? Was it direct mail, in-person fundraising, or event fundraising? And I need you to allocate all of these funds into their respective appeals. And I need you to organize it kind of like in a pie chart so that you have a visual of where your money came from the previous year. This is extremely important because it's going to let you know exactly where you should allocate all of your efforts for this coming year. So if, for instance, you only raised 10% of your end of year fundraising from social media, then this year you're going to spend about 10% of your time on social media. And I think that this is going to allow you and your team to understand exactly what efforts need to go into what territory. Oftentimes what happens is that people go into the end of year fundraising completely blindsided and they don't know where they need to spend their time or efforts. And so they spend most of their time and efforts in areas that are unnecessary or that won't generate the revenue that they expect, so they don't hit their goals. And then they're in a panic because they don't understand why they didn't hit their goals. So I need you to look at this pie chart and I need to know how much of it was from direct mail-in checks, how much of it was from email campaigns, and how much of it was from social media, in-person, major gifts, whatever you may have, grants, whatever you may have on there. And I need you to organize it so that way you know exactly where you and your team need to spend their time. This is where your concentration needs to be. And I need you to allocate a percentage of increase into every single one. So if your goal is to raise an extra 10% and you have five categories that raise that money, I need you to allocate, an extra 2.5 or 2% per category. And this will help you understand exactly how much of your time and effort, but also how much of your planning and strategy needs to go into these categories. If you raise 10% of your fundraising from social media, there is no reason for you to spend any more time than 10% of your time on social media in the future. It's just not going to turn around that way. Now, if you come to me and you say, you know what, we raised 10% of our efforts on social media last year, but this year, social media as a whole has brought in 40% of our donations, then we can reconsider and talk. But unless that's that extreme situation, I would recommend that you just stick to what was successful last year. It obviously showed that it was really effective, and I need you to do it again this year. Now, what is going to happen after you pull all of this data, which for me, it's the most exciting part, is knowing where time and effort needs to be spent, where my efforts were successful last year and in previous years. But I know for many, it's their least favorite part of the job, and that's okay. I need you to set up a meeting with you and your team. And I need you to start setting up meetings for your end of year strategy, at least on a bi-weekly basis, if not a weekly basis. Even if it's just a 5 to 10 minutes, hey guys, we don't have any new updates, but we want to let you know that we're on track and that we're hitting our goals and that we're meeting our deadlines. And thanks for being here. See you next week. But I need you to set up a meeting on a bi-weekly, if not a weekly basis. I typically in September start doing bi-weekly, October it's weekly. And it's actually weekly until probably the end of January. I know even after the campaign has ended, I want to make sure that we are sending out thank you notes and that we're talking about our strategy, that we're unwinding about our strategy, that we're sharing our experience about it so that way we can make notes while it's fresh in our heads. So I want you to sit down with your team, whether that's your board, whether that's your ED, whether that's you and your development team and marketing team. And I need you guys to start considering, your strategy. But the first meeting should be analyzing all of this data. So that way you are all on the same page. You can all sit down and say, hey, these have been the numbers for the end of year campaigns over the last 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, last year. And this has been the appeals that have been the most successful for our end of year campaigns over the past years. This has been where we allocated our time. This has been what has proven to work for our nonprofit. And this is where we plan on allocating our time in the future. Your end of year strategy should not be the time to do something new and different. New and different are okay in small patches during this time, but you don't want to do something so extreme that it ruins the entire campaign for you for the entire year. Again, especially when so much of your revenue is dependent on it. Now, I need you to sit down with your team, and this way your team knows exactly what their responsibilities are going to be and what should be expected out of you and them during this time. I belong to a lot of groups on social media, and I can tell you that the number one thing that most people complain about is my ED doesn't understand how important direct mail is to the campaign. And so they're having me, pulling me from direct mail and having me do more social media. Or my marketing director doesn't understand that email marketing generates, 20% of the revenue, and they're now focused on social media. Or my social media manager doesn't understand that, we're dependent on the revenue from social media, and they've been focusing on graphic design. There's so many of these complaints. Now, your responsibility as the fundraiser or the ED of this organization, or even the board member if you're watching this, is to know what is being effective and what isn't. And the only way to do this is to effectively have these conversations, to know exactly what is working and what isn't working. And people don't know unless they know. So until you show up with this data, people won't know what is being successful and what isn't successful for your nonprofit. I guarantee you that all of you will be on the same page after you sit down and you read through these numbers together. Everybody wants to excel and succeed and fulfill the mission. Nobody wants to fail. So this is going to open up so much opportunity for communication, but also is going to allow or remove all of those road bumps for you and ensure that you are capable and you are able to do everything you need to do to be successful at fundraising for your end of year appeal. Now, if you need help with your end of year appeal, or if you have further questions, contact us at anniereed.com. We'd love to be able to assist you. If you are interested in having us run your end of year appeal, it is not too late. We can assist you, and we can promise that you're going to have an increase over last year. Our fundraising consulting opportunities start at just $9.95 a month, and we would love to be able to assist you and your team, your development team, your marketing and fundraising team on excelling at all of your goals for your mission. Visit us at anniereed.com, and we look forward to seeing you there.